Uh, well, we are rushing against time, and I don't think we have more than 10 or 12 minutes to go. I will take 5 questions, not statements, and then we will give time to the panelists to respond to whichever aspect they want to. The floor is open. Okay.
Thank you, speakers. I'd like to address the questions to, sorry, my name is Michael Heng from NUS. I'd like to address the question to all the speakers. Given the kind of social conditions the diaspora are living in, would they not be able to draw the cultural resources from their, let's say, host countries to try to interpret and provide some solutions to the problems that their homelands are facing? For example, the lady mentioned about this, using imagination to look to the future. What about solving problems of the current time, the issues of modernization? Thank you.
Anyone else, please? Yep. There.
Hi, I'm Rachel Amsis from NUS, and I have a question for Ms. Anam. I'm also part of the US diaspora, actually. As you mentioned, we had many speakers and moderators today, but only one woman so far. I'm wondering if you could speak about the challenges of feminism in the arts of South Asia and the greater South Asian diaspora.
Where?
Hi.
Yep.
I'm Ashish from SPGen. I have a question to Dr. Aasim. So you are talking about political integration. Is it mean an integration of political system across boundaries? And if yes, is it possible in today's scenario, considering Kashmir as a glaring example?
3, 2 more, please, if at all. Yes. Yep, I got them. No more. Yep.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ram Saraswanam from TED and Inc. conferences. Dr. Akhtar brought up a very good point about diaspora taking on the state. But my question is to Dr. Raja Mohan. People from the diaspora who are participating in the political movement in India, they have been on the wrong side of the media because they're free thinkers and speak a little too openly. I would like you to comment on that, please.
The last one, please, here.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kaushik from SPGen. My question is to Dr. Anam. You are yourself from Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, in its recent political history, has been back and forth from the two ladies in the, and also you have eminent writers from Bangladesh who happen to be ladies. What is happening differently in the Bangladesh literary scene and even in the political scene that so many female writers and even political leaders are coming forward?
Well, we committed a gender injustice by putting the lady at the end. We will rectify it by asking her to start first.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I'll answer both of your questions together because they're related. We have in Bangladesh our two most prominent political figures are women, but actually that's a common thread throughout South Asia. You know, all the South Asian countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, have had women heads of state. But I think, although that is a very good sign, I think it's important to remember that, in fact, this has a lot more to do with dynastic politics than it necessarily has to do with the fact that, women have a very big status in those societies. These women are all related to powerful men. And when they come into power, they don't necessarily advance the interest of women. Having said that, South Asian countries have some of the strongest women's movements in the world. And it's a really interesting thing to note, and I think it's because, in fact, the struggles in South Asia in terms of trying to empower women are much greater than that in the Western world. So a lot of Western feminists have given up and said, okay, well, we basically got what we wanted. We have a certain amount of equality, and the sort of power has gone out of that movement. Whereas in Bangladesh, for instance, we have a very thriving women's movement, and people are still on the streets, and International Women's Day is celebrated with great pomp. And there's still a lot of activism going on to try to change certain parts of the Constitution, to change women's access to their legal rights, to empower them in other ways. So this is one of the great things about South Asia, and particularly the case that I know best, which is Bangladesh. In terms of women artists in South Asia, I think I would say that we live in a patriarchal world, and women have less access to all fields in all careers than men do. Having said that, I think the arts are a place which have a greater degree of gender equality. For instance, in literature, I don't feel that as a woman writer I get fewer opportunities to be published than male writers do. So it is one of the fields in which I think some of those inequalities are slightly lessened. So that's another reason I would encourage all the young people in the audience considering careers to go into the arts.
Thank you. Dr. Akhtar?
I wasn't necessarily suggesting, although in the long run I think it would be great for sort of more meaningful political institutions to emerge which bring the countries of South Asia together. In the first instance, what I was suggesting is that the diaspora, or like I said, broadly the middle class, needs to take on its own state. So the Indian middle class needs to do that with its state. The Pakistani middle class needs to do that with its state. I mean, Kashmir, perhaps in a different sense from what you were suggesting, is a perfect example. Both states, in one way or the other, use or sort of project this notion of an intractable conflict as a means of stopping a process of economic and political integration. And so what often happens is, for example, in the Pakistani case, is that if there is a solid, a broad-based political movement to challenge our own state vis-a-vis its Kashmir policy over time, and similarly in India, I think that takes away the mandate of our elites to stop a process of change from taking place. Because very often that process of change, I'll give you another small example. One of the most intractable problems in Pakistan right now is an ethnic insurgency in Balochistan. And all too often, what we hear in the media and from within government circles, particularly from within military circles, is that it's all funded by RAW. And we can put a stop to that by saying, no, it's not funded by RAW. It's precipitated by, and it spreads because of state repression. I think Indians saying that to their government about Kashmir would have the same impact in making it political opposition from within, and therefore taking away, in some ways, that age-old slogan of the states, well, that it's them who are doing it.
Thank you. I think the question of the role of diaspora in domestic conflict within the countries from where do they come has been pegged earlier in our previous sessions, and I think you have done well to say to what extent Kashmir, Balochistan, Northeast, Sri Lankan conflict, Maoists, whatever. I think this is a very vital issue, that the diaspora, while evolving certain pressure points on economic and cultural issues, must also think along the line of political consensus, not only on the conflict issues, but also on the question of democracy at home. The values, I think this was the point you underlined far more strongly, that how wherever democracies are not there, whether pressure can be generated for them. Wherever democracies are malfunctioning, whether pressure can be generated to reform them, rectify them. I think this is a question which needs to be thought through, at least. We have not started doing. Raja?
I just want to make 3 points, which following Tommy Cope. I think the question on questioning the state, I mean, that point Professor Muni has made, at least in India, the non-resident Indians have already become a major constituency, influencing debate in a number of ways. First, they contribute money, which is a big thing for Indian politicians. Instead of collecting 1 rupee each going into the streets, it's much quicker to collect dollars from abroad. So there is a voice that automatically comes in terms of financing the political process in India. Second, even on the films, today Bollywood makes films that are directed purely at the non-resident Indian communities, which get first release in London. A lot of these films, which are not success in India, but they rake in their money by being sold in DVDs for the Indians who live abroad. So in many other ways, in academics, for example, today the kind of state of Indian universities on a number of areas today, foreign academics today coming in, they're mostly non-resident Indians or people of Indian origin who come, who today are eager to teach. So in a sense, in many ways, my newspaper, a large number of Indians who live abroad are today writing columns, frequently contributing to the debate. So I think it's pure osmosis. It's beginning to happen in terms of their influence and impact. But the question of the fundamentals or not, I mean, that's another issue. The second, I think, the question of Kashmir was raised. And I think that takes back to the point I was making in the morning. I think we're not talking about, if we talk about redrawing the borders that have emerged out of partition, no one is going to accept. So when Manmohan Singh says, look, we must make borders irrelevant and generate some benefits to those who live in the contested zones. And I think that is the important thing. And I think there, in terms of the actual negotiation that went on between Musharraf and Manmohan Singh, the idea of a Kashmir settlement is the closest we ever came to understanding, which is don't change borders, make the borders soft, create trans-border institutions for the Kashmiri so that the Kashmiris benefit out of this process by building trans-border institutions. So there again, I think the problems between India and Pakistan are not between two states. There are people in the regions. The question is, can we do the trick of transcending borders, of creating conditions where the communities which share so much in common can work together and then find a way out of the conflict? I think those imaginaries, shall we say, are open today in a number of areas, whether it's in Bengal or Punjab, 2 major partition states, or Kashmir today, which remains unresolved, all require the transcending the existing lines without violating anyone's sovereignty. And I think that trick can be done.
Thank you.